Sometimes in a family conversation, one person speaks the most. They have strong opinions. They ask the hard questions. They interrupt. They repeat their point. They take up space in the room. And because they are so visible, everyone may assume they are the problem, or the decision maker, or the one holding everything back. But that is not always true. This is the pattern I want to name today. The loudest voice is not always the deciding one. In family enterprises, volume can be misleading. The person who speaks the most may not be the person with the most influence. The person who reacts strongly may not be the person everyone is actually watching. The person who argues may not be the person who decides whether the family moves forward. Sometimes the loudest person is carrying anxiety. Sometimes they are carrying frustration. Sometimes they are trying to be heard. Sometimes they are reacting to a decision reality they can feel but cannot name. And if we only focus on noise, we may miss the quieter force shaping the room. Because in many family conversations, the deciding influence does not need to speak loudly. It may appear in a pause, a facial expression, a short comment, a silence that changes the temperature of the room. One person may speak for 10 minutes, another person may say almost nothing, but everyone knows whose reaction matters more. This can be very confusing for the family member who notices something is off. Because the visible conflict may point in one direction, but the invisible influence may sit somewhere else. The room may look like it is reacting to the person who is speaking, but actually, the room may be reorganizing around the person who is quiet, the person no one wants to upset, the person no one wants to disappoint, the person whose approval is never officially required but still emotionally needed. That is why the loudest voice can become a distraction. Not because that voice does not matter. It may matter very much, but it may not explain the whole decision reality. A family may spend a lot of energy trying to manage the person who speaks loudly. They may say, if only this person would calm down, or if only this person would stop resisting, or if only this person would stop making things difficult. Sometimes that may be partly true, but sometimes the loud person is not the source of the stuckness. Sometimes they are the signal. Their reaction may be pointing to something deeper in the room. Maybe they feel a decision has already been made without being named. Maybe they feel responsibility without authority. Maybe they feel a promise is being changed. Maybe they feel the family is saying one thing and living another. The loudness may be unhelpful, but the existence of the loudness may still be information. This is why, as an observer, I would be careful about confusing expression with influence. Expression is what we can hear, influence is what changes behavior. A person may express a lot, and influence very little. Another person may express very little and influence almost everything. In family enterprises, influence often travels through history, sacrifice, loyalty, fear, dependency, gratitude, or old roles that no one has updated. So the person who decides the room may not need to persuade everyone. Their presence already shapes what people are willing to say. Their disappointment already shapes what people avoid. Their silence already shapes how far the conversation can go. That is a different kind of power. It may not be formal, it may not be loud, but it is real. And when this kind of influence is invisible, families can misread the situation. They may think the problem is conflict, but the deeper issue may be unspoken authority. They may think the problem is personality, but the deeper issue may be consequence. They may think the problem is communication style, but the deeper issue may be that everyone knows where the emotional weight sits, even if no one says it. This matters because misreading the loudest voice can lead the family away from reality. They may try to quiet the wrong person. They may ask the wrong person to change. They may blame the person who is most visible, while the real deciding influence remains unnamed. And when that happens, the family may become more polite, but not more clear, less noisy, but not more honest, more controlled, but not more aligned. So when a family conversation feels intense, it may be useful to look beyond who is speaking the most. Notice who changes the room. Notice whose silence creates hesitation. Notice whose reaction people check before continuing. Notice whose approval seems unnecessary on paper but necessary in practice. Not to accuse, not to expose, not to make someone the villain, but to see the room more clearly. Because sometimes the person making the most noise is not the person deciding what is possible. And sometimes the person deciding what is possible barely needs to speak. That is why the loudest voice is not always the deciding one. The real question is not only who is speaking, it is also whose presence changes what others are willing to say, do, or risk. That may reveal a different layer of the decision reality. And once that layer becomes visible, the family may begin to understand why the conversation feels louder than it is clear.